Who's supposed to be the host here? Student host. You hear it?
No, it's not me. I'm presenting. Let me check who it is.
Ooh, you're presenting right now?
Well, yeah, second, but yeah, I am presenting.
Okay, this is room 4, Friday. It should be Chris Bayer. Is he here? No.
No, but I'll text him.
Okay, because I gotta make him host. Here's what
Yeah.
I'll do. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm making you host.
sounds good.
Then you can make him a host.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
But then once he's made, or I should make him a co-host, right? Or just have you just been doing host?
I've been doing host. Make him
Okay.
a host because then they can like pass off the hostness.
Okay, sounds good. Oh wait, it's actually Christine. Christine is supposed to do it today. Christine, are you good to host?
Yeah, I'm good. I wasn't sure if, because my name is on there, like you guys are saying Chris, so I wasn't sure if it's me or not. But I'm here if you want me to.
No, it's because just looking at the list, it's Chris is later in the day.
Yeah, I'm cool with it.
Okay.
Go for it.
Then I will make you host. Oh wait, no. Okay. Okay, now you have host privileges. So just out of curiosity, guys, on your end, do you see that Katrin's audio is still not connecting?
Yeah, it's not connecting.
All right, let me just message Katrin. Oh, never mind. I thought your audio wasn't working, Katrin.
Hey, Garrett.
Hi, Katrin.
Okay, no, I was actually not logged in yet. That's why.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, but yeah, thanks for letting me know. I'll be right back. I'll come back in 10 minutes.
So Josh, Pearson, you guys ready?
Yeah. Ready as I'll ever be.
Fair enough. Although, did you not want to go to the rest of Michael's reviews?
Why?
Because you're like later, right? Because it's our section. We end with Pearson, and then you are after Carla.
Yeah. I think I'm last, correct?
Yeah. And you're in this room, but I'm just saying Michael's like section is in room 2 for like the first session. I don't know if it
Oh,
matters to
okay.
you, but you can stay in here if you want.
So
Just thought I'd point it out.
I can switch to room 2.
Should be able to. You're welcome to stay here if you want, but that is Michael's section. So.
How do you do that again?
I've just been going on Blackboard and just going
Oh,
to the Zoom link.
okay.
But you will be back here at like 1-ish.
Okay.
Or let's see. Like 2 o'clock.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Garrett. Appreciate
Yeah, no
that.
problem. So Kelly, are you all set?
I'm literally getting ready right now. And I have like a million tabs open on my Chrome.
I would just make like a new window.
Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna do. Hi, Alan. I believe Katrin will be with us shortly.
Okay, yes. I need a haircut. Jorg,
Hey, Alan.
how are you?
Oh, I'm okay. I just got my first vaccine shot, so
Oh, wow.
tired. Yes. So how are you?
Good. Yeah.
Very, very, very Christian.
I know I'm really, really shaggy. I've got a haircut scheduled next week, but I'm like,
No,
yeah. Yeah, it's like the corona.
oh, well, the top hair is a little bit. Is a little bit. Is he called Iron Heart? No, I think in English it's Prince
A Braveheart.
Braveheart. Exactly.
Yes.
Eisenherz in German. Braveheart in.
Ah, okay. Yeah, yeah. Mel Gibson. And like, yeah.
Hmm. So yeah. Katrin.
Hello, hello, Jörg. Hello, hi, Alan. I don't know actually if
Oh,
you speak
Catherine.
German. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Do you guys know each other actually?
Yes.
Me and your guy, yeah. Yeah.
From Berlin, yes.
Yeah.
Are you currently both in Berlin?
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
I'm in Zurich, so
Oh, you're in Zurich. Okay,
I
yeah.
haven't been in Berlin for more than a year, I think. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's
Well, I'm
interesting.
in Berlin.
You're in Berlin. Okay, fantastic.
Rotterdam.
It's so nice with this Zoom environment to like invite like your friends and colleagues from back home. You know, I feel like that might be the last review where we'll be able to do this because we're going back to person soon. But it's really great. Like our first jury yesterday was also, I think, Swiss, Austrian, German, very international, like 3 different continents in the end. Hi, Michelle. Hi, good to see you.
Hi, good to see you too.
Thank you for coming. And Michelle, are you in Los Angeles or East Coast?
I'm actually in San Francisco.
Oh, San Francisco.
I don't
West-
I
Okay.
don't know if you can see the fog.
I can just see a beautiful green tree in the background. Yeah. That's
Enjoy.
nice. And
Yeah.
do you know Jörg Stollmann, Michelle Cheng? Jörg is based in Zurich, but he's actually teaching in Berlin,
Nice to meet you.
TU Berlin. And Alan Smart, he's based in Berlin.
Nice to meet you too.
Michelle is I guess based in, I don't know where you're based, in Boston usually, right? Or
Usually.
usually based in Boston, teaching at the GSD and running her studio there. So yeah. And I think we're waiting for Andreas Lechner from TU Graz and Jonas Tratz. There he is. Hi, Jonas.
Hey, Jonas.
Hi, Jörg. Good to see you.
I just wanted to check. It looks like Jonas, I think you might be in room 3 actually.
Oh no, we
Emma's
changed
section.
it.
Oh, you changed it?
Yeah, we
Okay.
just changed it. Yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay.
Our students are very much on top of things, but yeah, we just kind of changed it last minute because some other changes happened, so we had to move people around. But yeah, thanks for and that's nice because you guys know each other.
Yeah, we do, and I do know Andreas also.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah, kind of fun.
Yeah. How do you know Andreas?
I actually met him on a tour with the San Rocco people some years ago, and then I was once in Graz as a guest crit, but physically a couple of years ago.
Very nice. Okay. Great, great. Yeah, and do you also know Michelle and Ellen?
No, not yet. But hi, Michelle. And hi, Ellen.
Nice to meet you.
And Jonas, you're joining from Berlin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but it's 9 p.m. in Berlin. How can it be so light?
Yeah, I don't know. It's Berlin summers, I guess. I don't know.
That was
Very far north.
It's the same for you, no? Jörg, where are you? Berlin too?
No, I'm in Zurich, but it's a little bit, yeah, you have more light. But we have a rainy day. Like I played
I'll
tennis
turn with the window here.
this afternoon, and I just stopped exactly when the rain started at 6. Hi, Andreas.
Hi.
Hi, Andreas.
Hi, all. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you in live for now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Schön, dass du gekommen bist.
Ja, danke vielmals für die Einladung. Total toll. Der Jonas ist auch da. Super. Hallo, Jonas.
Hi, Andreas. Hallo.
Witzig. Was haben wir jetzt? Berlin, Zürich. Jörg Stollmann ist in Zürich. Ja.
Genau.
Du bist in Graz, Andreas?
Ich bin in Graz, genau.
Okay, wir haben Berlin, Graz, Zürich, San Francisco, zweimal Berlin, ja. Zweimal Berlin, Berlin twice, San Francisco, Graz, Zurich, and Los Angeles. And I don't know where the students are. They might be somewhere in Korea, or I think my students are all sort of in, Garrett, you probably know, right? They're probably all around. Some might be in Mexico, but many of them
I think most of us are in LA area, generally speaking. And then, yeah, Jackie is back home, I think. And
oh,
Yeah, this is super weird. I'm like in Berlin, but am I the only like native Los Angelino guy?
Oh yeah, you're probably the only native Angelino in this entire panel. That's right. That's right. I'm not native Berlin, but let's just say I'm native Berlin, sort of, right? But I'm in LA. I didn't know you. Yeah, you're native LA, but you're in Berlin. Yeah, everything.
I grew up in La Crescenta, where the 2 meets the 210, and
all right. Okay. There we go.
Foothill Boulevard. Crescenta Valley High School, go Falcons.
All right. Okay.
So,
very cool.
Yeah.
No, fantastic. So, okay. So once again, we have Germany, Switzerland, US, and Austria. Those are Germany, Switzerland, US, Austria. 4 different countries represented in our jury. That's really fantastic. Also 4 different time zones. And I think we can just get started. We've got our review scheduled starting officially at 12:15 with our first students. So I just kind of want to check if everybody's here who's supposed to present right now. Kelly, I already heard you somewhere in the background.
Yes.
Okay, great. You're still setting up. Okay. Kelly and Garrett is obviously here, and then Pearson, are you here also?
Person is here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. If not, I'd ask Kelly, like, what's going on with Pearson. But okay, fantastic. So, so you will, the jury, you will be reviewing students from 2 sections today in the next 3 hours. First 3 students from my sections, and then two students from Michael Fox's section. Yeah, and overall, this studio, the students are, this is the final project of the bachelor's program at Cal Poly Pomona. We have a 5-year program, and so this is the senior project, basically their final project. We have a total of around 108 students, I believe, and they're divided into 6 different sections. Yeah, so you saw like all the names of the 6 different faculties. So each section has around 17, 18 students. And every section also has a very particular focus on the type of program and a general geographic area in Los Angeles to choose from. And so in my section, we're focusing on cultural and civic buildings. The buildings are around 60 to 80,000 square foot gross. So in square meters, we should translate this now to square meters. Actually, it's just divided by 10 more or less, right? So it's 6,000 square meters. Sounds so small in square meters. And then the general geographic area in Los Angeles is the Toy District in downtown Los Angeles. It's kind of like Skid Row adjacent, so it has a pretty large homeless presence. But we're looking at the site in a sort of like perhaps optimistic way that there will be solutions for the massive homelessness in Los Angeles in the future, and that there will be some kind of development happening in this area. And I think this area is particularly interesting because it has a very different scale to the rest of downtown Los Angeles. It's very small scale. It almost feels a little bit like a village, perhaps not quite, but like a small city. It comprises like several blocks in the Toy District, and I would say the general heights that are currently there are between 1 and 2 stories usually, and 5 stories is the max. And 5 stories feels about right for the scale of this sort of like little enclave within downtown. And what's very significant about this Toy District is that it has a network of alleys that cuts through the blocks, and those alleys are sort of used in a very informal way by the residents, and there's kind of like these marketplaces. So it's a sort of multi-layered, like world that happens there. On one hand, homelessness, then the kind of busyness of the Toy District, the wholesale area, and then those kind of like backstreet markets. And we are kind of just anticipating a future where probably the buildings will be all at around 5 stories. And so that's what you will see in those proposals most of the time, that the students are kind of assuming that the future will have a larger scale. But everybody—
Are there things like height limits and FAR ratio codes or envelopes or whatever?
Yeah, well, students will talk about that. We're actually allowed to go higher than that, but we sort of felt that it's more appropriate for this area to not go that high. But you will see kind of like that in the proposal of the students. And most of the students, all of the students want to kind of maintain the character of the neighborhood and keep those back alleys, but sort of anticipating that there will be changes, that more people will live in downtown Los Angeles, and there will be more need for like cultural amenities, neighborhood cultural amenities, perhaps libraries and so forth. And some of the students incorporate services for the homeless as well. We started with senior project in the fall semester, last semester, where the students worked on programming, so not on design yet. And the students each developed their own program within that given area of cultural buildings, such as library and so forth. They did a zoning analysis and code analysis, and they chose their particular site, their particular plot of land within the toy district. So I gave them the larger geographic area, and they chose like whichever site they wanted to have. And then they also developed a particular like interest, attitude, architectural concepts that they kind of wanted to pursue a little bit further. Yeah, and then we started with the design this semester in the spring. Yeah, so I think we are ready to start, but I want to officially introduce the jury now that everybody's here. So first of all, we're joined by Michelle Cheng, joining us from San Francisco. Michelle is typically based in Boston, and she's faculty at the GSD at Harvard, and she's the director of Jaja Co. Do I pronounce this? Okay, great. And she does like fantastic work and interesting installations. Andreas Lechner, I'm so happy that I can use my German pronunciation now for your names, is joining us from Austria in Europe. He is faculty at the Technical University Graz at the Institut für Gebäudelehre, which I somehow feel does not exist in the US. I've never come across it, but I think it's such a super exciting subject, like very interesting. Ellen Smart, joining us from Berlin. Ellen Smart, originally Angelino, and Ellen is an architect and writer and currently based in Berlin.
And we do publishing and design also now as other forms.
Oh, okay, great. Yes, and formerly faculty at Syracuse and other universities. And then Jörg Stollmann, he is joining us from Zurich in Switzerland, but he's an architect and urban researcher, and based in Zurich and Berlin, and co-founder of Urban Inform, and he's the chair of the Department of Urban Design and Urbanization at the Technical University in Berlin. And then finally, last but not least, Jonas Tratz. He's joining us from Berlin, Germany, and he is partner at the architecture firm Pact in Berlin, and he also teaches, and currently he has a teaching position in Erfurt, Germany. So thank you to the jury for joining us today, for spending your time with us. And actually, I also want to welcome everybody watching us on YouTube. So as you know, this is like YouTube live stream. We did not make the link very, very public, but we gave it to our students. So very likely some of our students' parents will watch this. So it's exciting. We have our work up on Concept Board. I'm just going to give you the link again so you have it right now. Put it in the chat. I'm not sure if everybody of you is familiar with Concept Board. If not, just click on that link. And then when you're on that page, on the left-hand side, there's a tiny little menu. There's a menu in a square with a few lines in it, and if you click on that one, it leads you to the sections, and you can select the name of the student, and it'll lead you directly there. So our first presenter will be Kelly, so you would just click on Kelly's name, who's last in the list, and then it takes you to her boards.
We access it as guests, right? And just sign in our names.
Yes, correct. Just as guests, and then it should take you there. But at the same time, we will be presenting on Zoom also with screen share. So you don't even have to go to Concept Board if you don't want to, but you can follow along on Concept Board, and then on Zoom itself, the presentation will happen, and we'll keep it on just also because we have YouTube Live. So whoever is watching us can see this also. Yeah, and overall we have 30 minutes total, or 28 maybe, for every student. And we're asking the students to please keep it to 8 minutes if possible to your presentation, so that there's enough time for feedback. I think we have a student co-host, right? And that's not Garrett. I would assume it's Garrett, but Garrett, you're presenting yourself. Is it Ghazi, perhaps?
No, it's Christine.
Oh, it's
It's me.
Christine. Oh, hi, Christine. Okay, perfect. That's very nice that you're the co-host. Okay, so maybe you could make me co-host. That would be good, just in case.
Yep.
make Garrett co-host too. No, I'm just. Yeah, Christine, if you could time the 8 minutes and just let Kelly know once she has a minute left, just approximately. And Kelly, if you need 10 minutes, that's what it is. But try to keep it short.
Yep.
You'll also need to enable share screen, Christine,
Yeah, exactly.
because it doesn't work.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Kelly, you are
Yes.
on.
I will share my screen. See full screen. Should be all working now. Yes. Great.
Yes.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Kelly Bergen, and this project is a museum. The program is an art museum, and it's dedicated specifically to the works from the California Light and Space movement that emerged in the 1960s. Additionally, this museum functions in two ways: as a museum during the day and as a bar lounge space that happens after hours. This allows the museum to be alive after the sun goes down and introduces a nightlife in the toy district that is currently non-existent. Here, this timeline shows the programmatic evolution of the museum. So it started as a singular collection of rooms for private collections, kind of evolved into being more public spaces as museums started to be more open to more and more people, not just privileged few. More different types of programs started to be implemented. So we see the introduction of cafes and then martini bars or roof gardens, sculpture gardens, and then I ended the timeline with the Museum of Sex that's in New York. Here you see people in a lounge, just having a good time in the lounge. So, however, I'm proposing that these lounge spaces take place within certain galleries, so you're directly in the presence of the art that's happening. Yeah, as Katrin mentioned, our site is in the Toy District. My lot specifically, is on the corner of Los Angeles Street and 4th Street. Scroll down. The massing, what started as a simple extrusion of the site, turned into subtracting these triangular shapes on the opposite sides that create two twin courtyards. And since there is a neighbor right here, this is a courtyard. It's not just open to space. That kind of like allows the extension of density on Los Angeles Street and the network of alleys that's right behind the building. Then I inserted this mass that acts as the entry gate to the building, then lifted the right arm that allows passerbys to like look into the gallery space that is on 4th Street. With the logic of the two arms, the circulation slots are placed in the inner V shape of the mass. So you enter the building and ascend through the left arm fully until reaching the hinge point where the two masses meet. You cross over and you fully descend into you ascend in the left arm and then you descend in the right arm. You go down fully until you reach this subterranean level where the building meets again. And then from that point on, you get shot up, and that's how you exit the building, but we'll see how that works out later. So for the site plan, as mentioned before, it's on the corner of Los Angeles Street and 4th Street. We can see here the two triangular courtyards. One facing LA Street has a grand stair with staggered seating. There's two entry points, so whether you're coming off of the main street or behind the alley networks, you can always access the building. The exit from the final gallery is right here. So that is how, no matter in which point you enter the building, you exit through a different point. So people come out through here, this underground kind of part, and then while people filter up through these stairs. So first look at the massing. This is the lifted arm right here that you can, passerbys can like look into the gallery, and here you can see like the top parts of a Larry Bell installation, and the staggered stair that is on Los Angeles Street, and these apertures that we'll see how they function when we look at the renders, the floor plan. The elevation on Los Angeles Street, the entry gate, and these apertures are placed within the circulation void. So that way there is like this triangle kind of visual from the people that are on the stairs, circulating up through the left one and circulating down through the right one. You can always kind of see them. The elevation on 4th Street, this is opaque, semi-opaque glass, so you're not fully looking into the gallery, but you can see shadows, and likewise people on the inside can see people's heads moving throughout the street. This is the elevation view from the alley. So here we see, this is where the exit is. People come out through here when they're finished through the last subterranean gallery. This is the underground plan, but first we're going to start with the ground floor. And I'm going to go through the logic. I'm going to explain them with the same logic that you would normally circulate through the building. So starting off from this left arm, you enter, and then we have like the lobby, gift shop, and the cafe. And this exterior part of the cafe is an aperture that manifests itself in the elevation on Los Angeles Street, becomes a void in the mass. So we go up, and the first platform you take in is a Terrell installation, and with this installation you can either move in to further the Gansfeld or the projection galleries, or you can take the other way and go into the Barbara Kasten gallery. And then we go up again into this Regine Schulman gallery, which this is one of the spaces that's going to be activated as a lounge or bar after hours. So hence why there is employee spaces hidden in the thickness of the hallway. So like ticket booth, coat room, and placed next to the core that has the fire escape, elevator, bathrooms. So we go through that. And the resin room that I coupled Dwayne Valentine and Peter Alexander because they both use resin, so they can be in the same gallery space. And then we hinge. This is the top floor where you can pass through to the other arm. I'm getting stuck. And then with these circulation voids, there are these half walls. So when you reach the top point, you can see down into the voids and see people circulate coming up and coming down. So
1 minute.
Okay. Coming into the Giselle Cologne gallery, circulating down to Douglas Wheeler. And now this is the point where we circulate down. So now, of course, we go back up to go down. So coming down to that first platform, we come down to Lottie John Dill gallery, go down again into Robert Irwin gallery, specifically I was thinking the Dusk to Dawn installation with Mary Course gallery on the side, and this is that semi-opaque glass that we saw on the 4th Street elevation. And with these slits, that allows light to filter in to kind of really work with the installation, the Dusk to Dawn installation, while also benefiting a Mary Course gallery because of the filtered sunlight. We take a chute down into that semi-subterranean floor that has the Larry Bell installation, the reflection gallery. So with the mass, it kind of works to amplify the art. So things are the art that is reflective or transparent, it's placed in the roof or on the sides to allow for natural sunlight to come in and kind of enhance the art itself. So here we have Helen Pashagan Gallery, also uses reflection. And then we go down into the Jennifer Steinkamp Digital Projection Gallery. And this is fully subterranean, so there's no light, windows, anything. So that way the art can really like be showcased. And I was thinking also this would be one of the areas that would be activated at night as like an underground bar in Jennifer Steinkamp's projection gallery. And then this is the chute that takes you up, and that's where you come out and exit the building. And conversely, when the museum is in after hours, that's where you would like enter to come into the projection gallery bar. And now we can finally go down and see the building or walk through the building. Oh, and sectionally, it's just a simple extrusion that's stacked. The floor thicknesses are 3 feet thick, and I was planning on using wide open web trussing in order to support the installations. Walking through the building, this is the entry gate with the 3 kind of points of visual interest. So the left aperture, the right aperture, and people walking in through the entry gate. Going up into the left arm, ascending up, you see the aperture that's on. That would be that aperture right there. See someone walking into the Terrell Gallery, and then up above, that's Regine Schulman. Going into that Terrell installation. If you walk that way, that's the Gansfeld. If you come towards the camera, that would be walking towards the Barbara Kasten installation. Part of the Gansfeld. When we go up again, this is the resin room gallery with the skylight that allows for natural sunlight to come in to really enhance the art. This is the Dwayne Valentine and Peter Alexander in the same room. And here in the background, you can see the hinge moment where you can cross over with the freight elevator in the background. This is where you cross over into Gisela Colon. And here you can kind of see the half wall moment. We'll see that later though. Another skylight to really enhance her art. If we walk this way, back into Douglas Wheeler installation, here we don't have any windows. From what I've seen, it's a dark room, and he uses artificial light to really make the space work. If we go, and this is looking from people leaving the Douglas Wheeler installation. There's that half wall I was mentioning. So you can just stand here and see people come down. And there's a skylight placed here because with this aperture here, there's no sunlight that can really get in to make this projection happen, unlike on the other arm. So that's why that's there. So that way there can at least be some kind of projection happening in this void. We go down into the Larry Bell, like half submerged gallery with 4th Street on this corner, and the Pashagan Gallery you can see on the side. And here is how that floor kind of works all together. You circulate through here, you go down, and then that's where the Jennifer Steinkamp Digital Projection Gallery is fully submerged. And you would shoot up that elevator to exit the building. And just as a closing remark, if I have time, Christine, the building proposes a time capsule quality, not only with the art being from a distinct era, but kind of a time capsule as people as well. People who experienced this art in the 60s, 70s, who are now like in their late 50s, 70s, have a place to go and feel nostalgic while also serving a younger generation with the lounges and bar spaces within the art. So when they get older, they can come back to the building and feel nostalgic. And this building, it's a building that you can always kind of come back to and have and remember an experience. And I don't know, the nostalgia is kind of like a disillusion of time. So that's why it kind of mimics a time capsule quality, both with the art and with the people that come here and visit it. But thank you. I can Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
So it's a bit of like a boomer preserve.
When you put it that way.
And so with the art, you are thinking that it will be always the same exhibition of the permanent collection, and so there'll be no rotating, like it'll be a like the same art in the same
Right. So
all the time. There'll be no rotating or visiting spaces or anything like that.
I don't have any of those spaces available now, but some are more lenient to switching out depending on, like, for example, this Larry Bell Pashagan space, those could be moved to supplement other of their works, but in terms of having different artists showcase their works, I was thinking not so much. But for example, that James Turrell tunnel, this is probably like would have to be a permanent stay.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, I was asking because I mean, it seems like particularly with a lot of the art you have here, that it's that in the 60s or kind of whatever, it was a new kind of art which had a new kind of relationship to how it's exhibited and to site, and there's this whole idea of the site specific. And so yeah, I mean, I would wonder with a James Turrell, would you even like go and get an existing one, or would you just like offer him a space and say, I mean, he's still out there, and be like, what would you do here, and let him do his own kind of intervention there. But I wonder if you like, there's always a question, particularly in architecture school projects, but I don't know, is that when architects look at art, and then particularly when there's this kind of a looping back of making a museum where the art is in the architecture, and the architecture somehow relates to the art, is how the art gets used as an example, because it's obviously a building and a sculpture are totally different kind of things. And so I'm wondering if you looked at other museums, at other kind of exhibition strategies that go with different kinds of art. Did you research models of museums, because this is like a super, you've written about, talked about kind of a theme, and then in that, like how does the building, like what is the relationship which you're establishing between the art and the architecture?
Right. That's something I try to calibrate, because at first the point that you made of, or is art going to be swapped out? So I proposed movable partitions, but when I started making the Turrell room, I've been to a Turrell installation, and that's why I guess I also have a sweet spot for James Turrell in his part of the wing. I kind of allowed the space to be flexible for, so a Gonsfeld and the projection galleries, where you can just, he can like project or do the whole like projection thing. And in some instances, and looking at other examples of the art in other museums, I was pulling, straight from references. But in terms of like the logic of who gets what room, or I decided to make just the walls permanent and just kind of divide the floors, like try to make it like half, like I guess fair.
Well,
but yeah, I'm not sure if I can answer your question. And then just kind of placing it within, I was, I guess, looking at more the rationale of placing them within parts of the building that would get sunlight, or maybe not so much sunlight, so I can like kind of calibrate between the mass of the building and making the art work within the building.
I wonder if there's enough specificity within the logic of the form of your project. I think that's another way to go about it. I think there's a lot of really compelling parts of the design. And I want to talk about that for a minute in terms of like the way you set up the problem. And then there is a kind of social sort of gift that you're giving to the city that I really enjoy. And I kind of want to sort of inspect that a little. So like by specificity, I think what's smart is you set up a 2-bar system, one by the nature of it being a parallelogram extruded, like a parallelepiped, you have the opportunity to sort of enter rooms obliquely. Just thinking about like how you see art, I know these aren't like planar and it's much more environmental, so it's a little bit different, but that already is set up as a logic of the geometry on one side, and the other is a kind of orthographic, a box. And then sometimes you treat the building as if it's a continuous bar on the ground level, and sometimes you treat it as discrete and there's a kind of clash. That specificity, I think, offers you all sorts of scales and ways in which you can think about the approach towards art that I really love. Then on top of that, you have this sort of other element, which is you're setting in these blocks, right? Some of them are boxes, some of them are prisms. This I really love, that somehow these throw a wrench into what could possibly be a homogeneous sort of like geometric order in the project. There's one that's a skylight, there's one that's a kind of window, but in a way, these are similar to the installations that you're looking at. They're somehow like lenses into the museum itself, which I think is a really beautiful idea without being so literal. The project in some ways reminds me of this essay that Jeff Kipnis wrote on the Stephen Hall Nelson Atkins extension. It's called And Then Something Magical, wherein he describes all the effects of the, I don't know if you know that building, Kelly?
Yeah.
You know, okay, yeah. So it's like these lenses, these glass blocks in the landscape, right? But it's not really a landscape, it's a roof to the basement. But he says that these lenses not only set up all sorts of lights effects on the interior of the building, but also set up a kind of social relation wherein through the entry of the Nelson Atkins, you at some point realize that you look back at the entry onto the visitors and the visitors themselves become art. Sorry, I'm sort of paraphrasing this pretty crudely, but it strikes me that I think your project does that too, in many ways. At the ground, in that solid bar, that there is a kind of conflation between the act of looking at art and the building's objects that I really love. But there's something else that happens, which is this window at the ground where you can see into the gallery is, I think, an extreme act of generosity. You know, you're looking at it from a very different vantage point, but this sort of relationship that you're setting up from the inside to outside, I find the most striking part of your project. I'm surprised, though, just one critical point, that the section is so regular, considering those as such so important in the project. You know, it seems very, very stacked.
Definitely. I got carried away with the art. I tried in midterms, I got carried away with taking the role of art curator too seriously, that I left the architecture to the side. So yeah, I sectionally definitely use some work. I focused on the plans and the art a little bit too much in the math, but I'm really glad that you mentioned the whole user as spectacle as well, because that was an original intention of having the users viewing the art and then them themselves become a spectacle to the passerbys on the corner lot.
I mean, it seems like for sure that you're like, it's a really Los Angeles thing to have the whole building be a stage and the kind of entering the building be this kind of like, you're showing up at the Oscars and you go up the stairs and it's like, and yeah, and with your kind of like curatorial mission, I think that like, I mean, one thing is that, I mean, having worked as an architect on art museums a bit, the like the curators aren't going to let you curate the art,
Yeah.
but it's but also things like you can't really do direct sunlight, particularly on resin, and then like it's and so there's all this both kind of technical and also kind of more like curatorial aspects. But I mean, I kind of asked my first question because it's actually like, I mean, I feel like it's a really convincing museum building, and the section in the galleries has been kind of not kind of touched yet, but it looks like a kind of like a regular art museum where you have like a rotating collection and the visiting shows, and you talked about like a flexible space which is just kind of made to be like a container that has light control, and that's much more of like the MoMA model where and the various kind of add-ons and redesign where it's like white box galleries with kind of light control, and then things with the Pompidou, there's this idea of like complete flexible environmental machines, and that goes more with the big institution museum that has a like its own collection that it rotates, and then it's got other things which kind of show up, and there it's like you allow like the curators to curate into the space, but it's interesting that you're instead looking at this more site-specific, more installation-based. And so I was kind of wondering if you like which James Turrell you saw, and like have you seen PS1 and the installation there?
I haven't seen that one, but I've seen his installation at the Kane Griffin Karokian. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but this green one specifically, I was referencing it from, I believe it was like the Blanton Museum. Yeah, I haven't been to any of his Gonspell installations though.
And Kelly, just in the interest of time, we only have a few more minutes left, so I just want to give the other jurors an opportunity to critique your project, if you don't mind. So I don't know, Jörg, Andreas, Jonas, please, if you have any comments.
Maybe you go first, Andreas.
I have a very quick question, Kelly. I'd be interested in the way that you came to, let's say, to a solution in the relationship between your circulatory spaces, or this, how you access the building, and afterwards how you circulate the visitor through your exhibition. And if there has not ever come up the question of having a relationship to the public space in these circulatory spaces again, because this would be something that would remind me of Rem Koolhaas's Kunsthal in Rotterdam, for example, where you give the visitor this additional possibility of having a relationship to your immediate outside urban space as well when circulating, which would then give the possibility of the visitors to observe them when observing, which is what I think that Michelle was referring to. It's about this second possibility of observing the observers, which is an important art historical 20th century aspect, that you make this relationship, this relativity of observation, what is that? An experience. So it's just about the circulatory spaces, why you keep them in this very intimate, why you keep them so intimate or so.
Yeah, I guess that's something I never really thought about. I thought with just the 3 points of like, I guess I was thinking of it as a visual sense, not in the bringing in the courtyard into the circulation, but I see what you're saying. Good point.
Good. Maybe I can continue. I only have 2 or 3 comments. I really think you have some beautiful and convincing documents, especially also all this series of images you're showing us. And I do like about your project maybe the number of elements that you really worked out, like the simplicity of this volume, and then something feels right about this number of elements that you chose to highlight. I think that's a good balance. I have I do see this gesture that you do as really a large potential, where I believe maybe those 2 bars and what they do on an urban level, it's not fully exploited, maybe, because I believe what it does or what it offers to the city might have been more explored in the sense of how do I arrive, what urban quality do you offer, can I sit there, does it have some urban green? And also the front and the back are very, very different in terms of scale of this urban streets that you're dealing with. And also I do believe that this geometrical clash, let's say, where those 2 rectangular bars are meeting, would have held maybe a potential, maybe also in section at this very point, that you could feel it more, that you cut it open, or that it gives that it reveals more in this point what you're doing, or that's something I've been waiting a little bit for. And then there's one point I want to add to what Alan said, and also Andreas. I think, to me, there is some question of a structural hierarchy that I'm curious about, or maybe not yet fully convinced, to really define for yourself what is permanent structurally. I mean, because exhibitions, they will change. Maybe it won't be a museum in 30 years from now. Things are changing so quickly. So I guess a certain adaptability, or to be very, very aware of what do I want to keep, what is my primary structure, what also makes the space, what is part of a spatial structural integrity, and what else can be added, but it's also okay if someone takes it away in 5 years. Like, what's the hierarchy of those things? I think this something could have been a little bit more clear, but yeah, I really think it's a beautiful project and has this good balance of maybe specific yet neutral, something in between, which I like. But maybe my biggest question would be concerning the urban spaces. Did you think about what those 2 spaces mean and what they can offer or what they do? Or did you try around a little bit?
Right, and I guess to quickly answer that, the one on facing Los Angeles Street, I guess why I split the staircase into like a staggered seating, because there's a lot of vendors, fruit vendors, all types of vendors. So you sit and like kind of watch people go by. I didn't really dwell too much into that. And then conversely, on the other side, there is, I don't know the future of the toy district or the alleys themselves, but if it does hold to that kind of market integrity, it would just be a place where people can sit. And that's, I guess, to the extent I took it.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're actually already over time, but if there's perhaps a last comment by Jörg, that would be great.
I think the most essential things have been said, and I think the questions, for example, that Jonas raised, maybe what concerns me most is this question about the relation to the urban fabric, which for me also I had a hard time from the material to judge, and it was not really kind of explained. But I also think there is a certain structural logic in the building, or a potential for a kind of even more obvious general structural principle that one would understand. And I think this for me at the point, especially where the two volumes meet, seems to be a little bit, you know, hidden in some kind of poché structure, joins that I think is a little bit of a pity, because the layout is pretty simple, and there are kind of serving rooms which you also always need in a museum. But yeah, I think there is a potential to create even a stronger tension between a general kind of rigid structure that the spaces have themselves, and the points where they start to be serving the kind of either permanent or changing installations within the building. And maybe it's also if for next projects you would start to talk about maybe a very essential spatial idea first, or spatial concept first, and then go into the execution. The way of talking about things while one develops the project might have even led in the development of the project to more clarity, because you lead us very quickly into, you know, how you develop this thing and how you solve a couple of problems before one understands or really sees the basic spatial idea as a statement. And I think it's there. And you have designed beautiful spaces. But for me, there's a little bit of kind of consequential logic that could have been pushed a bit further. But yeah,
Okay.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for the comments, and thank you, Kelly. I think you have a really beautiful presentation and beautiful project, I have to say, really fantastic. And I think it's like so intimately related to your program also. I think you were really the one who really did a very program-specific building. And I think that was also part of like how we started this discussion, the relationship of art and architecture. So really this relationship to art, could you empty out the building and it could become something completely different? That could be an interesting way to think about that also. Or is everything, are the spaces so specific to the art, or is the kind of like the circulation very specific to how you need to experience the art? And perhaps kind of like what Jörg said at the end was interesting about how the two volumes meet, that poché space is, yeah, what is exactly happening in here? You know, we've been talking actually a lot about that, right? Like about that very crack.
Yeah.
But I thought some other interesting comments, like from Michelle, about sort of like the different geometries and the wrenches that you throw into the architecture to suddenly create these like twisted and weird moments that kind of reflect the art that you have, I think are really interesting too. This slight weirdness about your building. And then I think like some other things that came up that, you know, Andrea said, and you know, like I think Jonas also mentioned about the relationship with the urban surroundings, the fact that you open up that big window, you know, I think that sort of like, let's say, generosity. I think the public space, or the suggestion that could there be an opportunity to use the circulation spaces to afford glimpses back onto the public space, sort of like as a palate cleanser. After you've seen the art, you kind of go back. So those are super interesting suggestions, right? Like for your next museum project to think about. I don't know which movement you're going to pick next, but I think that's great. So congratulations on the project.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for great comments.
And sorry, I have to be so strict on time because we're like all lined up, like all the 6 sections. And so we have a bit of a transition break between us and Michael, but we should kind of like we should be on time. So our next presenter is Garrett, and Kelly, for some reason, you're the host of the Zoom session now. Could you make Christine the host?
Yeah, I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, and then, or at least can you just give Garrett screen sharing privileges so he can share his screen? I think Christine accidentally made you host and now you don't know what to do.
Yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna leave
I
the
was
meeting.
just gonna say that.
I'm just gonna leave the meeting so that way it goes to someone else.
Do you wanna buy the screen share? But there's a green button right there. You can enable other people to screen share, or you can just click on my name and make me a host. That's another way.
I think I did it. Multiple participants can share simultaneously.
Perfect. So
There we
Garrett,
go.
you can share your screen.
Yep. All right, perfect. So, hello everyone. My name is Garrett Hartziker, and this proposal is a library in the Toy District, which investigates solid void relationships as a means to create gathering spaces and exploring, sorry, I forgot, switch to full screen, to explore how the library can become a place of where we explore how a stereotomic structure can be exposed at points to alleviate the sense of imposition that comes with heavier materiality. And the project explores how the library can become a place of casual interaction and would not only be a place of literary knowledge, but of a kind of social knowledge, enhanced by the major courtyard space and views into and beyond the project. The project is located near the southwestern edge of the Toy District, along Winston Street and San Pedro, where the building is set back from one alley and opens up to a cajone, which is an alley used as a market space and place of gathering. The zoning of the project is in a commercial district with unlimited stories based on zoning, as well as type 1 construction. The program is then subdivided as such where the public programs like the cafe and lobby space are on the first story, where the west volume is primarily the library space and the south volume is primarily office spaces, especially in the central core of the project. And the massing is really developed from carving out this massive volume at an angle to generate interest towards the cajones and of fourth place. And the project makes use of a courtyard typology to engage the cajone that connects to a cafe and lobby space as a place of reading and relaxation. The courtyard is then sunken 3 feet to enhance the public space and draw people in from the alley and Winston Street. And here we can see that void space underneath, which acts as a corridor through which you can enter this courtyard, as well as a space of gathering. And the building seeks to turn its back on the street in order to focus more towards the cajones along fourth place and further orient the projects towards a more pedestrian experience. The building is also set back along the east side to further accentuate the alleys, the network of alleys beyond into the Toy District. So on the first 2 stories, we have 2 wings, which are subdivided by the lobby and cafe space. And as we go up, we have the more private work areas, where there's a double height volume along the edge of the 2nd and 3rd floor, which allows for views and connections to the courtyard. And the stair along the main library space is always in the same spot in order to allow for anyone viewing from the cajone, they're able to see movement from the landing. And as we move from the 4th and 5th floors, where these 2 volumes meet and connect together, we have this double height space, which becomes both a place of learning as well as gathering. And this space is then more private along the street due to the increased number of fins along the edge of the street. And in the same way, the project makes use of wooden vertical fins as a means to reduce the heaviness of the concrete structure and the stone veneer. And the slats along the street and alley facades are more tightly packed to both provide privacy and create a sense of mystery and ambiguity as one turns the corner and passes the threshold by the cantilevered volume and enters the courtyard. And as one enters the courtyard and turns the corner, the fin configuration becomes more dispersed as it opens up to the more public program. And the central double height space that nearly wraps around the whole geometry is then indicated by these taller fins on both, which span the second and third floors. And here we see the section of the double height space where we can see that even the more private spaces begin to merge with the more public aspects of the library. And here we see that even where the volumes do not connect in this section, the office spaces along this left volume still connect to the more public reading areas on the right through this double height space and allow for views between them as well as into the courtyard below. And the scheme is ideally charged to allow for introspection as the reading areas accumulate near the double height space and allow for interaction and views into the working spaces across the way. And the working spaces then allow for a similar condition that give the user the ability to read the elevation of the library and the different quality of spaces within. And here we can see in more detail how this double height space wraps around the courtyard to accentuate the geometry of the courtyard. And the composition of the facade is then made up of a stone veneer as well as wooden vertical fins, which is then inset into the floor slab with a glass enclosure that allows for transparency while also providing enclosure for the project. And the structure is made up of concrete beams and columns with cores at the edge of each volume supporting that structure. And although the fins primarily are used for the purposes of the partee, they still act as a way to provide shading for the project, where along the north side we have the more dispersed fins, and then along the south side we have more tightly packed fins in order to provide shade along the south side and provide a sense of privacy. And overall, the project seeks a relationship with the striated void and the more stereotomic structure, and allows the library to explore how it can be both a place of introspection as well as interaction. Where upon first glance, there's an ambiguity that gives way and unfolds as one turns the corner and enters the project, and it expands from this simple storage of books to a place of interaction and relaxation. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett.
I super like this one also. I'll go first again, but because people were quiet. But I wonder if the idea of the stereotomic volume is not a useful approach here, and maybe not what you're actually doing or want to do. I'm super interested in this idea of the fins and how it seems much more like a because you're trying to create this kind of inner block courtyard, which as you said has like the kind of turns its back to the street and makes this kind of shaded interior space, which is a really Los Angeles like thing to do, both in terms of like just the social fabric of the city, but then also the kind of the climate there. And so I'm wondering if this wrapper of fins that makes this kind of environmental conditioning thing might actually be the whole kind of envelope of the building, except on the on the north, and then if the volumes of the library didn't necessarily always have to have the same relationship with it, like if there were areas where the fin wrapper was just on its own and it was outside, if there was areas where it was engaged with the reading rooms and stuff, and then if there was areas where there was like a gap or like a kind of like a little envelope, and it was much more of like of a curtain wall shell building, with like within kind of envelopes and membranes rather than like a massive, like dumb Dutch block thing,
Mhm.
I do have few questions, maybe,
Mhm.
or also comments. Maybe the first would go in a similar direction like Ellen's. You explained a little bit that it came, or the initial idea was like a play with solid and void, or mass and void. I do feel maybe if you go to the perspective from the street, this one where you have this column in the very corner, maybe it's just me, but for me, voids is something about carving out, and this image shows a lot about a structural approach, and it exposes the structure, and it's really a logic that's additive. I mean, I see the slabs, I see the columns, and all of this for me is a bit contradictory to a mass void scheme that maybe would be more like a solid thing in which you really have defined cutouts. I know you maybe talked about it more in an urban way, let's say from top down to carve out the courtyard, but this might have been interesting as a concept to take further, I believe. Also, if you go up a little bit, you have those 3 steps, which things like this can be very useful, but let's say the explanations primitive and modified and final, it would be nice to really describe the steps, or I'm sure you have worked on alterations of this, but if this is shown as a process, this cutting out of things could have served, I think, your project further. And also, I believe that shows in the facade this stone veneer, which I believe could be a very nice idea. You also showed it in the detail. It has this horizontal set off, like a piece of masonry. That could be interesting because it, to me, indicates something load bearing if you have this horizontal set off like in an actual wall. So something solid again, but it really is just a little bit in front of this concrete slab. So all of what could be solid is dissolved again a little bit. So that's the mixed feeling I have. I do like the courtyard, maybe that's the last word. Also how it shows this image that you have, I think, also the other one, sorry. Other courtyard image, I think this moment when you are in one house and you see your own house by this opening, this is quite beautiful. But again, to me, it's more a structural image. It shows clearly like something stacked, which I like, but it's also about the way you present it. But I see a lot of quality exactly in this image and the space that you open up between.
And maybe I can follow up, Jonas, because I had the same concept, but maybe also because I was working for Axel Schultes for quite a while, and he was all about carving out. So totally obsessed with like carving even to a minimum of where you could feel the remaining masses. But also, Gary, when you talked about it, as if 2 volumes would meet but before you had talked about, so you have to conceive of the whole building as one, then the carving happens. And I also see that I think in the structure, you change the direction of even if you need columns or plinths, you change the direction of them. So I think that this is, I think, a major yeah, maybe major indecisiveness, if it's really a structural, two structural elements that come together, or one element that is carved out and that at certain points still needs a remains of what it was as a massive one, and where then the facade shows about the activity of cutting or what has been cut, and also how this is then translated into a facade. Yeah, and I think that the courtyard and the gestalt of the building, you know, it comes really down also to what Jonas recognized, this kind of corner element with this kind of column that really stands in the corner where it should actually be cut, becomes unclear. Yeah.
I mean, there's a problem here, and I think it's a thing that we do that is a problem in architecture education that that the students, I think, need to work to kind of like overcome and be smarter than us, because with this, like, you know, trying to talk about whether or not it's a carved out volume or is it a like a structure thing. Obviously, these are not the same kinds of things. It's not a carved out volume. That's a metaphor. Or it is that, but it's that on a symbolic level or an imaginary level, but on a real level, it's a structure. And so when moving from the idea of the carved out volume to this, like, you know, where you're like drawing the section that shows the I-beams and the, you know, and the curtain wall, you move from the symbolic into the real, and that's a big part of the work in the game. But I think that these different levels need to be judged and need to be engaged with in their own.
But Alan, it's not about symbolism. It's not about symbolism. It's about the gestalt of a building. And anyhow, like, everything comes down to certain kind of load-bearing elements that bring structurally the forces down, and maybe in a kind of more direct or a more complicated way. And, you know, I can't tell you how many, like, 10 centimeters thick steel plates I had to put into this building to make it look carved out, you know, total absurdity. Right. But yeah, it was meant to give from its gestalt, from its physical form and expression of how it relates to the surrounding, to the earth, and what keeps it up. And I think this is why I would not go into a symbolic discussion, but into a decision about how materiality is transformed in a way that the building talks about its most specific gestalt qualities. But, you know, this happens, you know, in some schools, and others this don't. So this is, if the discourse is not really there, then you can't put it on a student. But I think this is what in Jonas and me creates maybe an issue, which for maybe Garrett hasn't been one, or, I mean, which is fair, you know.
So maybe I can talk about that a little bit. I think in some ways, going back to the column, yeah, I think I was always kind of debating between whether it was a more tectonic or more stereotomic structure. And I think this column, it was sort of at odds with this, because I was trying to also talk about frame, which I didn't really quite talk about, but that I was trying to, like, frame the courtyard. But in some way I can see how that column reads as something that's additive, and it doesn't feel like it's being carved out of the space, that it feels kind of added on.
And you would also see that then the mass of the structure above it, you know, should have a little bit more volume to give you the impression that it's really, you know, hovering above without a column. And so you put the column and you make it rather thin. So this gives the other idea. And I think it can work both ways. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be carved out, but just the way that you explained it led us on this kind of trail. And I think it would similarly work as some kind of more structural tectonic concept. But let's have someone else bring up other topics.
I might just add that I think that the multiplication of urban spaces is really convincing in your project. I like this intimacy and at the same time public character that you achieve to produce in your courtyard. And I don't know if it's a European thing. Of course, we are a bit irritated by the column, but on the other hand, you could you could make an Aldo Rossi column, which is enormously thick and 2 meters in diameter, and the irritating element would become a decisive, expressive element of your design. Was that not something that you considered, Garrett?
I had thought about it a little bit. I think I was trying to make it consistent with the rest of the columns, which I don't know why I did that, but I think I was trying to make it just part of the I was thinking of the interior as the exterior, for like, even though I should have treated them the same. So I was thinking of it as kind of the same scale, but because it's the entry, it should be like massive. Yeah, I think that would help to generate that stereotomic sense of the project.
And maybe as an overall comment, I wonder, but I think I'm not that familiar because it has been ages since I was in LA. Like my brother was living there for the last 7 years, and I didn't even kind of visit him once because last year I was stepping out of the plane the day before the lockdown when I would have. But I wonder, like I wondered for the street facade if there was a little bit too much like glazing, even though you have those fins, even though you have these shadow elements. But I thought that to treat, or it could have helped to treat the interior and the exterior even a little bit more differently. And I can see that this kind of opening in the interior is really nice because you have this courtyard, this shadowy courtyard, and maybe then also the relation to people working inside and then looking down and finding friends who have a coffee. On the outside, I think it could need a little bit more of mass, but also a certain kind of discreteness of the building, you know, from the urban space. It's impression I have to give it also a big attention when you enter then and go inside and find this courtyard.
And did you guys learn about solar geometry and like shading and things like that? Because like if you actually work those fins up as like engineered sunshades, they would probably actually get I said larger, but they would also get more interesting. Like the ones on the west would be actually would go vertical, and the south ones would be horizontal, and they would get, you know,
deeper, and that was something that we had discussed. I think in general, I was just thinking of it as one consistent strategy, but I think it's something to explore.
Yeah.
I think this is a great discussion. I think it's also interesting to see how all the things come together. The discussion about whether it's a solid that has been cut or whether it's elements that come together, then kind of translate into the very detail of the project, right? It's an integrated project. We're talking about everything, but they're not like discrete parts of the project. One really informs the other. And so I really enjoy this discussion, and it's so funny that we have a discussion about this one column, because I have to say yesterday, it was also a European American panel. It was actually a European Canadian panel. And there was the same discussion. There was a project by Jamie. She's probably around here. Jamie, it was obviously a very different project, but there was one singular column somewhere. And and there was the question, is this good, or is this annoying, or is this like a happy mistake perhaps? I think Garrett's column is very different. It does not read like a happy mistake in that sense, because it reads much more intentional. I think the column yesterday was read a little bit more like a tongue-in-cheek comment, perhaps, and you know, there were different opinions about it, certain beauty of the mistake. But I think here your column really reads and is sort of like represents the very core of that thinking about whether your project is really made of carving and subtraction, like a messing diagram where you have this big mess, you carve out the courtyard and then you carve out the kind of transition, or whether it's assembled by its pieces. But then if you go a grain deeper into detail, you could also say it is carving, but then at the same time, I'm expressing the very structure and the fact that you have a solid corner and that your windows don't wrap the corner at this very point. You know, you almost want that line to go down. So it's weird. But we're now looking at that courtyard view also. And I think what you very elegantly did is actually that very moment where you come out of that tunnel, that gateway, and the wall on the side gives it a little bit of heft, the solidity, before it transitions into that like more open facade on the courtyard. But yeah, I think this decision of whether your building is a folded line or whether it has been cut has implications on your facades also. I think Jörg sort of mentioned that that the cut kind of produces something else, right? Like if you kind of look at this exterior versus you carve something out on the interior courtyard, subsequently there should be something different. Or when we go into more of this idea of solar protection as well as privacy and street presence, then the density of the fins should be a different one on both sides. And I think those are things that you have also been thinking about. So a really great discussion, I think, really fantastic, and things that you've been thinking about. But you can see that people, you know, the jurors will read your projects like literally in the sense of what you're presenting and then kind of reading your project that way. Yeah. But great job, Garrett. I think you've come a long way. I'm really happy also to see like your newest renderings of the courtyard and everything. They turned out really well. And I enjoy the fact that you are using CMU as a veneer. I don't know that I've ever seen that, but it's kind of nice. So great. I'm gonna use this for one of my projects. Thank you very much, Garrett. Thanks to the juror.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Garrett.
And we have for my section, we have one more project before we switch over Michael Fox's section, and our last presenter will be Pearson. Hi, Pearson. Do you have screen sharing capabilities?
Believe so.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, great.
Hello, my name is. Are we all ready? Okay. Hello, my name is Pearson Lord, and this is the Museum of Los Angeles Art. The museum displays art that is inspired by the various physical and cultural aspects and experiences of living in Los Angeles. The building is located on the corner in a corner lot in the Toy District off of a busy street that leads to downtown Los Angeles. It contains it contains a painting gallery, sculpture gallery, auditorium, cafe, library, and rooftop bar. The design was conceived through the negotiation of program versus form and solid versus void. The form was found through the process of stacking and lifting the various programs that would exist within this building. The program and the solids require light, filtered daylight, while the programs in the voids have access to direct daylight. The form stands separate from the surrounding buildings and levitates off the ground floor and ascends away in order to attract people into the building and to create an icon within the toy district. The facade is composed of a metal mesh, with the second level being constructed of a typical wall with metal mesh on the exterior, and the fourth level being glazing with metal mesh on the exterior. The first floor acts as a void in the form, and it connects the ground level to the city and lifts the building off the site. The sunken auditorium becomes a public stage, and the cafe extends through the glazing onto this public plaza. The transparency and the programs within the ground floor are meant to attract pedestrians by displaying services that are public and accessible. The second floor is a solid in the form, which is where the painting gallery is located. There are light wells along the perimeter of the space to allow in a small wash of light, but does not allow any direct daylight into the space in order to protect the art. The interior walls are meant to separate the space, and to provide more hanging room for paintings, and they are detached from the ceiling in order to allow in this daylight wash. The third story acts again as a void, and it contains the sculpture gallery and the sculpture garden. The space takes full advantage of direct daylight and the Los Angeles climate. The garden and gallery act as one space that displays the sculptures and allows for views of the toy district and the downtown Los Angeles area. The fourth story appears as a solid from the exterior, but the metal mesh allows in filtered daylight for the library. This level plays with the concept of solid versus void and how it can be experienced as one or the other, depending on whether you're on the street or within the space itself. The rooftop again acts as a void with a glass enclosure and patio acting as one space that houses the bar and restaurant. The program extends the daily life cycle of this building and is meant to entice non-art lovers to visit this museum. In this section, you can see better demonstrated the light wells in the painting gallery and the sunken auditorium and this metal mesh in the library space, as well as the vertical circulation. And then on the elevations, you can see how the facade and mullion systems are working together, and some more context of the surrounding area. And then here we have the structural diagram of the building and the wall section, and a diagram showing how daylight is either blocked or allowed into the building throughout the year. And then here we have a series of interior renders that are all taken from the viewpoint of the elevator door. So here you can see the gallery or the lobby with the cafe and the sunken auditorium. And here you could see the painting gallery. And here's the sculpture garden area, the library, and then the rooftop bar. And then to close out on the last drawings are just some renderings of everyday activities and life that would occur within this building.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Pearson.
Did you look at the new museum in New York?
Yes, that was absolutely something I was looking at.
This feels like a Los Angeles-ized new museum.
I'm not mad about that.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Beautiful project, Pearson. The way that this very clear logic of stacking and having at the same time these extremely generous spaces that are, I guess, in a way, intentionally very different to the spaces that the toy district is made of, and so it seems to convey this very generous ambition that you have with your project that really opens it up and have these very breezy and open and light spaces. And also I think that the way you represent them, it's very beautiful and very consistent, and I like the way that your floor plans have different elements in these stacked layers above. So actually I'm just commenting, I'm not having any real questions here. Thank you very much.
Me too, and I also think that, like from what we saw today, the sections are really convincing. You feel there's a real tension between the different floors. There's an idea about you know, how these spaces relate to one another, or how they create different atmospheres. And I also like this kind of, you know, supposedly elevator view. I think, yeah, what can one criticize? You know, if one is really mean, then one would say, okay. Stupid German would say, why don't they draw the foundations and the ground floor, you know, it's just this black mass, it doesn't belong to the building. Or the sculpture plane, you know, the sculpture visual perspective, the sculptures are a little bit mediocre, you know. You could have, like, I remember when I was young, when I went to Mies van der Rohe, Berlin National Gallery, and there were these huge Anselm Kiefer lead planes, or, you know, you could have chosen a little bit different, like kind of more heavy sculptures for that space. But no, I think it's a really convincing, beautiful, open project. Yeah. Can please somebody be nasty and have something that you actually,
maybe
know,
me, the
really
next
hate about it, you know, Jonas, come.
Okay, I have to say, I think it's architecturally very consistent first, but I do have some minor remarks, let's say. For example, I would believe that working in both section and elevation, also on like vectorized cut drawings, would help. For example, it would be a question of mine if it's intentional that those grids, like of this outside mesh, are not aligning. Could be that you chose it, but there's so much beauty in the plans and overlaying and a little bit of a Miesian feeling to it. So I would consider this something that maybe you could have worked out with more time. Because if we zoom in on the elevations a little bit, I think there is different grids and they are not really matching. So either this is developed as a moment of friction that benefits the project, or I think another solution would be just aligning it. I do miss, maybe because you have such a beautiful set of perspectives of those, like the top garden is not there, or whatever that is. Is there maybe I missed out on you explaining it. What is on top?
Yeah, so the very top level is the actual roof, but there is like a screening over it to hide the more mechanical systems that would exist on the roof.
Okay, so it's not an open roof or something.
No, I wasn't.
Okay,
I didn't.
Maybe it's the only bummer, since from proportion wise, I would also believe you feel that it is minor, or it's like not really part of this play of mass of these two other bigger parts. Maybe it's a little too small for engaging with them. but maybe not. It's just me trying to think about a few things. I really do like this project, but I believe like working a little bit more in like with drawing actually, for maybe both section and elevation, could also sometimes help you in decision making, really architecturally how things work.
Yeah, but but Jonas, it's a super interesting question, because that's what I also asked myself, because he's recessing these elements, from this side. Then it's actually, where do you start with these grids and with these, this is why these grids, are not aligned throughout the whole building, whereas I think the columns are. And that's, for example, something that Mies would have never done, to kind of really separate the so-called cladding, or this kind of outside kind of display of the structural elements in a kind of mode of transfigured transparency with the interior structure. So I think a cultural critic could have a very interesting remark of how that is postmodern or late modernist, or to do so, and how un-Miesian or Miesian on a second thought. But yeah, the author would have to speak if this was a very conscious decision or a mistake.
Well, with the Miesian thing, and this is maybe not so much like a nasty critique, but I think it is worth discussing, particularly since the original kind of reference was the new museum, which is which is like metaphorically a stack of volumes. But when that was made, and kind of in that kind of formal logic, it was very important that the volumes sit on each other, and there isn't like a reveal or like a gap in them. And so here you've kind of lifted them, and you've added these notional voids, which are clear glass, which has only really meant a void since back in like the high modernist kind of era. And so it's like, despite your mirror wrapped columns, it's actually, like, to my American eyes, it looks even more than Mies, like it looks like kind of a Gordon Bunshaft kind of Mad Men high modernist, like the Lever House, where you've got these, the whole thing lifts off the ground, but then you've got like the volume with the hole, and then you've got, and then over that there's the next volume, and like in between there's always this clear glass kind of a space, which is its own like outdoor, indoor outdoor, kind of dematerialized, membrane, but then over it there's like another kind of cladding that reads as solid, which is also glass. But and so with that, it's more of this American kind of like kind of high modernist, like kind of corporate modern, but super sophisticated and kind of nice here. And so with that, I mean, it would be interesting to like, to kind of really run that down and say, yes, I'm going back to 1960, whenever it was, and we're really going to do this high modern again, and it'll be great, or else it's something else. And then also with that, you've got this kind of like magical, milky, white, wonderful facade, and it's like in the solids, and it's like, yeah, that sounds wonderful, but I'd love to see a mock-up of that, and to actually get some lights on it and see how it will be this wonderful translucent scrim, and not like a glaring, glowing thing, or like a Venetian blind from IKEA or whatever. But that's like right now this wonderful, undelivered on like magic thing that I assume you'll work out in DD or whatever.
Ta-da.
Nothing left to say.
Yeah.
We do actually, Pearson, your project was so coherent that you actually made up for all the lost time at the beginning. But we do indeed have a few more minutes. If anybody wants to say something about Pearson's project, or talk more about Mies, or American versus European references, or structure versus envelope, or representation, please feel free, or if you have any general comments.
Could take always more into details. For example, let's say, no matter what reference we speak about, is that, let's say, the ground floor where you enter. I'm now looking at it, I would believe that also there, kind of, the question, is it like really, is it all flat? What kind of surface is it? Is it this, since it's almost this like seamless transition into that space, do you have the same material on the outside and the inside? Is there one step or not? Like, how do you engage with the city? What is also the message, and how much of how open can it be, or how seamless, and how much of like a little push against the city and that neighborhood do you maybe need? Is there the need for a step? Maybe you could elaborate on this a little bit.
Yeah, so I was thinking the ground floor would be a continuation of, like a concrete surface that already exists from the sidewalk, to further tie the city into the first, like the ground floor, to really make it like blur the line, the difference between the two, is how I was thinking about it, in general, for that ground floor.
Liberate the ground plane, pilotes, like the free plan, it's 5 points. It's like old
For me,
school.
Yeah.
For me,
It just stays good, you know.
For me, there's just a general question to all the three projects. Like I did hear nothing about, let's say, the technology of, let's say, air conditioning or energy consumption, or thinking about shading, material, recycling, upcycling. No, it's like this is how this seems like being also a very kind of modernist, approach. Did you discuss like how environmental concerns would affect your buildings?
What are you going to do when OPEC,
for example?
embargoes?
No, I think that's a really good point. So like this studio in general was an integrative studio, so meaning that the students had to think about structure, and as well as systems, air conditioning and environmental systems, but it was not such a major thing that there were a lot of like lectures or anything like this. It was really more about think about solar orientation, or think about where you could bring your air conditioning equipment in, where are the mechanical rooms, or if they're kind of like alternative system. But it was not the focus to kind of extensively think about it. But definitely, I think the basic ones are really about, it's specifically being in LA, about solar protection and shading. So I think that's,
And
yeah.
and the second question, as you mentioned, and I'm not familiar with this neighborhood, but all three projects seem to have a very strong agenda about catering to kind of a well-off, educated, high-end clientele. And I in all of the three projects, I wouldn't find like a corner, a space that would accept or would be generous to, let's say, the homeless, or people of kind of lower economic standards, or even of yeah, it has a very gentrified feel to it. And I think the way that you introduced the whole area, I thought that projects would also, think about, how their back ends or how certain, front and back sides are organized in order to have a certain hospitality also to the non-consuming members of the
it's interesting that you call this the non-consuming members, because I think that is the problem in Los Angeles. Like public space costs money. Like if you want to go somewhere and just hang out for free, you always have to pay, unless you go to the beach. Like the beach is the kind of most democratic free space, really. But we have been thinking about that.
Or the library, though.
And the library, and we've been thinking about those like spaces for the non-consuming, for the non-consumers, basically, not just in the sense of homeless people, but also in terms of like everybody. What if we could kind of open up the city and make it a space that has truly public spaces where people can go without paying anything? And we kind of like refer to the idea of the public living room, kind of like the public space where you can go and you can sit. You could have a coffee, but you don't have to. You can meet informally with friends, watch people. At the same time, you can also consume, like you can also go see art or do something. But it allows you to kind of like just hang out in the city, something that Los Angeles doesn't have that much. So that was a bit of kind of like a thought behind the project. I think that all of the 3 projects have integrated this. I think like Kelly's project has the stairs, for instance, where people can hang out. I think, and certainly Garrett's project is a library, as Alan said. Like the library in Los Angeles and in the United States is actually the home for homeless people. It's because it is the free space, so the library has spaces, and I think in Pearson's project, same
and
thing.
particularly since like we don't live in space like so much as we do in information. It's where when you're homeless or when you haven't got a computer, you can check your email, you can access public
information,
services. You can like it's a place where you can like plug into that network that if you're not plugged into, you're truly lost,
Yeah, and I think that's what in Garrett's project, that's like an opportunity to like homeless people could come have these services, potentially use computers, or there could be other services like a job center or stuff like this. I think definitely Pearson's and Kelly's projects appear much more polished architecturally, and but I think that's a really good point. But we've been looking at that overall in terms of like how can Los Angeles be a city that has more of these public spaces that allow for people to meet and have a dialogue. But yeah, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. So just once again, Pearson, I don't want to forget about you. So great, really beautiful drawings, really great project. I always felt like that you had the ability to do very little with great effect. that's like I always sort of like you always did something and everything was beautiful, and kind of like that's the most like very simple moves and it all turns out really beautifully. So I think that's great. I thought it was a great discussion about the precedents. I think precedents are always really exciting. So kind of like the idea it's like an LA version of the new museum. I think that was interesting. Because it feels more generous. Like LA, everything is bigger and more generous. You don't have that tightness of space. And perhaps because of the gap, it lets in more light. And then kind of like what is Mies in this whole thing, and what, the columns, the location perhaps of the columns versus the skin is like something to look into. I think your project is an interesting mix between generic and specific. Like on one hand, it feels very generic just because it's stacked boxes with spaces in between, right? Like it could be anything and has a certain looseness and a certain generosity that way, but it's still very specific because you really respond to the requirement of the program. The gallery needs this, sculpture space has a different lighting condition, you know. So you bring in that specificity without being overly specific in the sense. And then I think like one last comment was, you know, there's many other things to say, but like the engagement of the public sphere, right? Like that was Jonas' comment at the end, you know, of course, we Europeans, that's what we always talk about, the ground floor and how we engage the city. And I think that's really important because you're also like setting the building back from the street a little bit, allowing for that plaza to happen in front of it, which is very rare in Los Angeles. And then you're kind of extending that into the building. And also, we haven't really talked about this in the presentation.
Hello, my name is Joshua Merton. This project focuses on film education in relation to innovation.
I think that was probably a YouTube video in the background.
Oh.
The auditorium that carves into the ground, and that can be visible from the outside. So we've brought up OMA Kunsthalle a few times. So that's a reference where you can like just kind of walk by and look into the auditorium. So anyways, thank you, Pearson, good job. And thank you so much to the jury. It was really a pleasure to like have this conversation with you. Thank you, Andreas and Ellen and Jörg and Jonas. It was really great to see you. And I hope that I get to catch up with you in Europe when I come this summer. It would be awesome. And so you will stay here in this room, just stay here. Michael Fox might already be here, I don't know. So you will see 2 more projects by Michael Fox. He has a different concept board, which he'll share. And then my students will go to panel 15. I don't know which room that is, but
I believe it's 3.
Okay.
I put it in the chat.
So it's room, yeah, it's right. We're all going to room 3. Okay. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you for the
Thanks,
comments.
guys.
Thank you.
Great work, everybody.
It's very nice of them that they let us stay here and we don't have to switch rooms.
Yes.
I guess that's all we have to do, right? Wait for the next group.
Very privileged.
Yeah, maybe they're also afraid we would just, you know, disappear.
Yeah.
No, I feel a little bit like it because I got vaccinated yesterday, and I feel like I'm falling asleep like crazy. It's hardly keeping up. So they helped me captive here.
Only 2 more, I think, right?
Feel it, huh? You have some.
Unfortunately, I have a glass of red wine too, but it does not really help. So we still have some students that are already there, but I think we have to wait also for the instructor, right? Because he might be on another panel. Christine you're the host, right? Christine, you're kind of the host also of us. Yeah, hi.
Yes, hi everyone. So actually the next panel will start at 2 o'clock. So you got like about 8 minutes. If you guys wanna like take a break, get a sip of water or something. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a quick snack or something.
Yep.
See you back. Thank you, Christine.
Yep, of course.
Hey, is this room 4?
Hi, Michael. Yes, that's room 4.
Wonderful. This computer is actually right here. That's running this. I have 3 of them, and I should have posted it then. Well, let's get going because, oh, sorry, I just turned it off. Who's sharing? Christine, are you sharing? What's that?
Would you like me to make you a co-host?
Yeah.
Everyone can share their screen.
Yeah, I don't think anybody needs to be a host. I just thought you were sharing your screen. Okay. Anyway, hello, jury. I don't really, my name is Michael Fox. I don't really know all of you. Maybe we could do some like very brief introductions. I'll tell you a little bit about these next 2 projects. Alan, maybe you want to I see we definitely have the European contingent here. Alan, you want to say a little something about yourself?
Me? I'm Alan Smart. I'm in Berlin now, but I'm actually I grew up in Los Angeles and then went to university at Berkeley in the College of Environmental Design, where we learned a lot about Alexander, but then also sun shading in a very like mathematical, rigorous way. So I can draw shadows, or I could at one point. And so now I'm in Berlin, working mostly on publishing and kind of graphic design and writing projects. And in the past, I taught at Syracuse in Hong Kong, at Ohio State, at the Sandberg Institute in Amsterdam, and then I worked in New York for Devoska Video Renfro and a bunch of other offices. I do metal work when I used to do it.
Andreas?
Yeah, hi. My name is Andreas Lechner. I'm an associate professor at Graz University of Technology. I'm also a practicing architect, and I was invited by Katrin, and I'm very happy to be here and join you. Looking forward.
And George, did I say that right?
Yes, yes, perfect. Hi. Yeah, I'm Jörg Stolman. I'm an architect and urban researcher. I'm chairing the chair for urbanism and urbanization at TU Berlin. And yeah, I was educated at the Academy of the Arts in Berlin and Princeton University. And I'm not practicing since 6 years and doing mostly like spatial and urban research currently. Okay.
Jonas?
Yeah, so I was also invited by Katrin. I'm from Berlin, like Jörg, and have my own firm called Fact. We do construction projects. We also do publication, work on publication. Like Ellen, we just published a small book on Berlin, and yeah, I've been teaching also both in Germany and Italy over the last years.
Very beautiful book.
Yes, indeed.
Have you seen it? I wanted to send it to you maybe, but if you already have it.
I would love to have it sent.
Yeah? Okay, you'll get one. So who's gonna be next? Are the students already here?
Yeah,
Cool.
I believe I'm next. I just don't know
Oh, yeah.
if Michael is going to present the overall studio. I don't know.
I think he might, yeah. But good luck already for the presentation.
Hey, you guys, I'm really sorry. So you don't need to know the story, but it's very confusing because we want to live stream. All these are like, it's why there's very few people in here, because people are watching them on YouTube. But I'm actually running 3 of them right here from my office, and we had a little technical snag in one of the rooms that I need to fix. So, but anyway, I heard most of your bios. I'll just tell you very briefly about this section, because I know you already watched 3 from Catherine's. Basically, so these are downtown also. Each of the 5 sections kind of have different kind of site. In general, our site from my section is in the, it's called the South Park District, but it's near the, Staples Center, LA Live, the Convention Center, all of this kind of entertainment civic stuff. There's an explosion of growth there right now with like almost 30 new buildings going up, approximately 70,000 new residents coming to the neighborhood. So it's really kind of an exploding area of downtown, mostly mid-rise buildings. And you know, with these students, I sort of gave them a prompt of really kind of looking at emerging technological trends and trying to, you know, identify or take a position on kind of how these emerging technologies affect our daily lives or living trends or cultural transformation. So to look at kind of you know, more inclusively, like the bigger impact of the evolution of the I suppose contemporary technological impacts. So you know, it's very general. They all take drastically different positions on this and kind of steer their projects around that. So anyway, let's just go ahead and commence with Carla. Are you ready? And
Yep.
Can somebody paste the concept board into the chat if it's not already? There's Catherine's, I see.
Should I share my screen or do I moderate?
You're not gonna moderate and drag people around, but you're gonna share your screen. Can somebody paste the concept? Okay, it's in there. Emily, it's the one from Emily. Because you can drag us around and sort of narrate, you know, take us on a drive, but I think people like to kind of pan around at their own pace as well. Okay.
Okay, so you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. So, hi everyone, my name is Carla Camarena. So to begin, the urban metropolis of Los Angeles has fewer green spaces than almost any major city in the country. This fact has motivated me to propose a project that will help enhance opportunities and appreciate for more urban green spaces. The Extended Garden is located in South Park, Los Angeles, California. It combines a hotel, retail space, outdoor stage, and a public park. The main purpose of the Extended Garden is to promote interest in connection to the public green spaces in an engaging and playful way. So here is So the project is organized in a tower where the retail spaces. So the project is organized in a tower where the retail spaces and parking ramp up to the first 2 levels. The main ramp finishes into a public stage that faces the civic park below. Here you can see a better view. Creating opportunities for social interaction. So the upper levels are dedicated to the hotel. The extended garden created by the ramp interconnects dependencies between building and nature. The design invites the public side into the building where the entry to the ramp creates a continuation to the neighboring site, placing a green connection to the Gilbert Lindsay Plaza. So the site is uniquely situated on the corner of Pico Boulevard and Figueroa Street. This is South Park, the area of downtown near LA Live and Convention Center, which is home to some of the most ambitious projects in LA. So here you can see site plan. So site plan, what I did is I opened it up in the middle for circulation so that people can actually walk right through it. From the right, we have a metro station. And then from the left, we have what's located the convention center, the Los Angeles Convention Center and Staples Center. So most of the projects that are to the left are very, it's a lot of entertainment. We have concerts, we have basketball games, there's just a lot going on. So here's a collage, it's a view of what what it looks like in the what I showed on this site plan, what's in between the circulation that will cross from left to right. So here is the second floor plan. The second floor plan is showing what this green space is all about, which ramps up to the second level, and it ends to an open public stage where you can have live music. And it's also in combination with some commercial as well. And then, so here is an overall view of what the corner of, I don't know if you guys, I think I skipped, hold on. So here's what the corner of Pico and Figueroa looks like. Can you guys see my screen, or is it just me that it looks?
I'm getting a black screen right now.
Yeah, it's lagging, right? Okay.
No.
It's like really slow for me. I don't know why. Okay. So here are, as I mentioned before, there's so here in these plans, I'm showing 6th floor, 9th floor, and the top floor. The purpose of putting all these 3 plans together so that you guys can see how this tower is actually getting narrow as it goes up. And this is due to the skin that I applied into the tower. So you can also see that on the corner to the left, we have spaces as you go up to the tower.
Hey, time out. This is not working.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't, is everybody in concept board, the concept board page? Jerry?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you just go in the concept board and moderate, okay? And
okay,
stop
stop sharing.
Yeah, it's too much for your connection. Okay. You just take us around there. Okay.
Should I turn off my video just to make sure?
Sure. Whatever helps. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. So let me go back. Okay, so do you guys see me? Did everybody move into moderation?
Yeah, seems like it's working fine. Okay.
Okay. So, I don't know if you guys saw the plans as I was describing them. But let's see. So then here are the unit plans for the hotel. Starting from the left, we have the suite. In the middle, we got the double, and then to the right, we have the single unit. And here is more of a just an overall view of what the units, the relationship between the units in the open spaces. Okay, and so here's a well section just kind of showing from levels 3, 4, and 5, the relationship between the green space and the upper levels. And then, so here are my, this is south side facing elevation. And then we got west side facing, which this is actually facing towards what the convention center and Staples Center, where they are. And then here's the overall section of what it looks like as well on the south side of the building. And so I think that's it. Yeah. Do I stop moderating?
Sure.
Professor? Okay. Cool.
So maybe I can start with a little question. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Looking at your project and let's say the volumetry of it, and especially some of the first graphics you've shown us of this, let's say, park, the Gilbert Lindsay Park, and this interaction between them, and then a bit lower on the board, there is a visualization that shows you how you would probably approach the building. Have you considered, let's say, the connection between the house and the park? Because you have the street in the middle, but there would also be potentially options to even connect them more to.
Yeah, I think from what I think I'm understanding is we discussed this, that there is a more of an ambitious plan to this, which since we have to, there's a metro station on the other side of the building, right? And then in the front, we have all these entertainment things going on. And so there was a consideration of kind of like bridging this project together and just kind of connecting it all. But I thought this was going to be a more an ambitious plan. It becomes more involved with overall the whole area of South Park.
Okay, I just saw it and had immediately the feeling, maybe even by changing the street layout or the fabric materials used on the ground floor, there could be a different interaction. While I'm driving, I would feel this, react to it, slow down, and there could be one possible way. Because I think the building makes this interesting gesture, and in order to enhance this linkage, this would have been interesting.
I see.
And maybe one question: could you elaborate a little bit on the sections? Because I'm quite intrigued by how it starts. Let's say ramping up, and I think you designed quite beautiful, like units and like elements that can be multiplied, and I'm interested in the floor plans. You have a little bit this rigidity, but also this interference or something of this vertical structure ramping up, but then suddenly it stops. Maybe to explain a little bit on that, or to elaborate on how much do you want to pull people in? Where do you end this journey into your house?
Sure. I don't know if you guys can see my moderation. I moderated to the second floor plan and kind of like the perspective view in the corner. So so the purpose, as I described, there's also commercial involved in the first 2 floors. And part of it is not to necessarily have it feel like a shopping center, but this would be a form of kind of intriguing the people into this space. And at the same time, as we have a combination of like retail, restaurants, or, you know, et cetera, now we have, we also have the opportunity for green spaces. So dragging people in and to just kind of like begin to enjoy as they're ramping up to these spaces, and you know, having the opportunity to actually take advantage and be able to see and be around these green spaces.
And your in your tower, those units are hotel rooms?
Correct.
Yeah. And so I mean, I'm kind of seeing this as a, it's this effort to kind of not only like add or to do green space, but to do verticality in a kind of a Los Angeles way, where
Correct.
it's rather than it's like the New York kind of high rise, it's a like a linear flat thing, but then it's like made to ramp up and spiral, and that's interesting. But then also like we've been having these kind of shifts in registers between talking about architecture as kind of like a social and economic kind of development kind of discourse where we're like imagining how people will live, how we'll get them to pay for it, like what the kind of experiential aspects are, and then how we can, you know, like what the kind of like the makeability of that social aspect is in like the kind of the materiality of construction. And the other one is you know, more kind of using these programmatic ideas to you know, as like a driver motivator to you know, do a more kind of like a architectural form. And this is interesting because it's got a like a different kind of relationship to between these modes we've seen. And so because I see it like the Standard Hotel in the High Line, where there's this where it's like it's a hotel, but it's not like an airport hotel where you're just staying there. We have to be somewhere else. It's like a destination, and so it's this idea of making a consumer, you know, like kind of lifestyle experience in urban space. And so I'm wondering how these kind of like modes between this kind of entrepreneurial you know, kind of impresario, kind of like Andre Balazs architecture, kind of versus a more like architecture where it's like it's a way to do a high rise, and how you're like working between these modes.
So I mean, because this is a very highly, it's gonna be highly developed over the next few years.
Yeah.
And
Carla, can you turn your camera on, please? It's just
Carla?
weird. It's weird to listen to your photo.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just okay. So considering that aspect, and then, you know, that's why I decided to do hotels instead of actually doing residential. Because just, you know, I thought it was very obvious the fact that, you know, we have the convention center, we have LA Live. So, and then this almost can start becoming like a hot spot of Los Angeles, which is actually something that we, that was mainly the big issue of what I was looking into when selecting this site. When you compare this to New York, for instance, we have the Times Square, right? When you have tourists coming in, you have tourist people coming in, people can get lost, and, you know, it will be most obvious to say, let's all meet up at the Times Square. Whereas Los Angeles is just everything's everywhere, and we don't really have that really, you know, that famous popular spot. And
There's no
so
there.
yeah, and so I do believe, and seeing that there's a lot going on with this area, this would have a really good opportunity, and that can be the next Times Square, but for LA. So that's why I did this whole, park ramp with the hotel and having retail in here.
But how would the Times Square of LA be different than the Times Square of New York? In your mind?
Well, yeah. So considering that I added in green spaces, we know that Los Angeles is, known to be more to have open properties. We have residentials that have backyards, front yards, whereas New York is all just high rise. Now, LA does have a shortage in space. We don't have no more space for housing, so we are trying to do as much as we can to build up high. And so just involving this whole adding green spaces to this area eventually will start becoming overcrowded, and then we hope to not miss that opportunity of having a lot of green spaces, because we are very limited in LA yet too. So.
And may I ask, so the green is the technology that you're integrating into the building?
Yes.
Relating to the introduction, okay. And how does it affect the buildings, like structure, layout, or this integration? How did you have to think the building differently?
It's like structurally. Well, I mean,
for example, or also because I can't see, for example, can you really reach these upper floors? Then if you have massive trees, most of the time you need, which I don't see in this section, you need very heavy earth, and you also need much thicker kind of slabs or tanks below. So at the moment I want to understand, like, how this kind of this vertical park, is it accessible to the last plant by nearly everyone? And then how do these levels really relate to each other?
Yeah, I did come up to that issue. I mean, even if I were to have, as I showed in the perspective, it does look like there's massive trees, and it would need to take really thick floors for something like that. But maybe just in general, like taking into consideration, we can even have like vertical planting, not necessarily have, really thick floors for this type of vegetation. If that makes sense.
I wonder if one, like at the moment, I see too little of the structural change, neither if you do vertical planting or if you do trees, because you could have taken advantage of it, right? Even the thickness of the slab, or something like where planted it coming from above, but I'm still feeling it below. I was wondering, like, how you thought of translating this into architectural terms, because I think there's still a lot more potential. Also, to go up and maybe then think, I've seen a tree already on the 3rd floor, but there must be some reason why I want to see it on the 11th, or So I think, yeah, I think.
Maybe this question of like, who is it for, would also be really interesting, because I feel us being on the other side, seeing it for the first time, haven't really understood. Is it like a journey that I am able to take through this house, or is it rather like just a socle, a base, and hotel guests get to profit from it?
Exactly, and I get a room on the 10th floor, and then I get a tree, but I'm not invited as a guest to the hotel to get up there. Yeah. What's the concept? Is it?
Yeah. So mainly, I first started developing this with the intention that the green spaces on the top would be more for the hotel, and the ramp would be more public for everyone else on the second floor. That was my first intention.
Okay, I think something like this makes perfect sense and happens often, but also this could have meant that there's a clear, it's clearly distinguishable in the structure, that there's a more public base and something on top, and maybe still a green facade that continues on.
Mhm.
And I would, if there's such differentiation, it would also be interesting if there's not still options for the public in a high building to access something else. For example, roofs are often accessible, even though just if you pay and have a drink or something, but at least some, like, this could be interesting to develop this as a kind of journey alongside the south facade that you have bended beautifully until the top. And I think this has so much potential, and you're showing us some of it. And we get also the idea of how your volumetry, where it derives from, but there could have been some more clearly formulated answers to that, I believe.
Because the whole beauty of the thesis is that you could actually challenge a client, because you're proposing something which maybe normally is not done, or maybe economically is a challenge or would not be financed. But by showing what this kind of vertical garden actually spatially can do, you might even find somebody who would go for this, especially this site. Okay, Alan, I interrupted you.
Well, yeah, and the idea of the ramp that lets you walk up the outside and get on top of the building is it's one of the stock kind of brutalist like function of the oblique tropes, and it gets tried over and over again. And the rhetoric, depending on the context, is like often different. And so like at the Boston City Hall, the idea is the public gets to, like, you know, climb all over their building and, like, you look in the mayor's window. But of course, now there are fences because of security. In the London City Hall, it's like, it does work, but it's more of like a control ramp up to a viewing platform. And so then the idea of doing this in a commercial hotel is, you know, like, and it seems like you're working on this, is you're trying to set up this, you know, you're trying to choreograph exactly what the relationship is between the private hotel rooms and also the kind of like the hotel like privately owned commercial public spaces. And it isn't all that weird to say that like a hotel bar is open to the, you know, like non, you know, guests, but then also like the really kind of like the public thing. And it's like, yeah, well, like if you do some utopian, everybody kind of wanders around idea, it would challenge a client, but I think you can set it up in a way where you're like, okay, well, that's like, you know, possible New Babylon, but then, you know, like we do know the Ace Hotel, we do know the Parent Hotel, like we do know these, you know, completely viable revenue models that, like, you know, that have been worked out, and like let's be like smart about this, and you know, and I think that you're beginning this, and the idea of imagining like the ramp all the way up, and then you kind of value engineer it like to one level with like the, you know, the kind of like the green deck. Like it seems like that actually would be what would happen in a kind of like a real architecture project, where it's like you imagine this whole, you know, and it ends up being, you know, this one move. And so I think like you're being like pragmatic here, but I wonder if you could spin out some kind of economic logic, or some kind of like a diagramming where you're like, you know, well, like you use this to kind of drive the architecture where you're like, yeah, there's like the public, the private, you know, like the hotel and the, you know, and it seems like it's there, but you could push this more. Yeah.
Everyone, I'm afraid that we are out of time. But thanks for your comments. I'm a little torn. It's the first time I think I've heard, you know, and this is probably our 14th student, but I think it's the first time I've heard a discussion about the project, which is a little strange, but you know, maybe it's the jury, but maybe it's this particular project. But they've typically been kind of discussions about the ideas, and I think this, you know, it's a fairly competent hotel project that could use some clarification, but I think the issues that are pointed out, you know, what is it actually doing on a kind of thesis level is still a little like undefined. You know, it's becoming a means to connect green space in downtown LA, and you get that when it's kind of a one-liner, like a big project, right? And it's like you can ski down the outside of the industrial plant. But I think that deeper question of kind of what it's doing on urban level with respect to green space is really where your intentions rest and where the project resides. It could be a hotel, it could be anything else. It, you know, it could be multifamily housing. I don't think that really matters. I think, and so it, you know, it's a like that's where I think it could use development. But I think that issue is provocative, so credit there. Let's move on to the next student, and congratulations, Carla and Josh. I still think it's better if you share screen because then it's on the live. Okay.
Okay. Okay. You're looking at my concept. Wait, yep, I think you are. Okay. Hello, my name is Josh. My name is Joshua Merton. This project focuses on film education in relation to innovations in streaming of content. And streaming content. So over the past 2 decades, cell phone and video streaming technology has advanced significantly. The smartphone has turned anyone into a broadcaster, and video streaming sites saw continuous, unprecedented user growth. Streaming platforms will continue to get our attention while individual creators reap the benefits of cheaper and more accessible content creation. So Metfilm, based in Europe, has recognized this shift and has already partnered with YouTube Space. Metfilm school curriculum focuses on teaching fundamental lessons in filmmaking, and its partnership with YouTube Space brings content creators with over 1,000 subscribers to use facilities, share ideas, and practices that make them successful on the platform. The project is located on South Broadway. Next to its most important adjacency is next to a historical district here on number 8. Here you can here there's the Ace Hotel and the Palace Hotel all within walking distance, and there's also schools located nearby, as well as the LA Live and Convention Center. So right behind the site, there's a very, very large project going up, a 28-story high-rise, and the adjacent sites are of C2, R4, and manufacturing, and the project has an unlimited height, has a FAR of 13:1, has a 90% lot coverage, and there's no setbacks. Here you can see that the site plan, there are 2 front-facing facades, which is a little issue, and the site can be accessed via South Broadway. The massing reflects the way in which the curriculum is separated at Met Film School. First year studies occur in classrooms and editing bays, and the classrooms and editing bays, and the second and third year students, their studies occur in the sound stages and editing rooms. The building is further divided into the way in which the stages of the way films are made, and their associated program pieces are put into these multi-story clusters. There's also a live venue on the bottom for YouTubers that have large audiences that want to come and see people perform or do their thing. So the circulation is located all towards the back of the site, next to the adjacent buildings. There's a filmmaker, an artist named John Cateau, and he wrote that a film is a petrified fountain of thoughts. In this way, the project's internal space sort of embodies this idea, and it serves to connect people visually and physically as they travel up the building. Here is the sort of rendered massings. The sort of stepping of the forms on the right is that way to increase the amount of public area and outdoor space that students have access to. And then a surface, like a building screen. This is a building screen that wraps a project, and it serves to represent sort of the unfolding of a petrified object. Here's a structural diagram of the structure of this project. And it consists of columns and beams, and the circulation cores are at the back. They serve as a shear force. You have this internal divide that has a very curvy column in there, and then the structural, the columns on the outside move and stretch to sort of meet the geometry of the screen. Here's an axon showing the light midday and how well it shades, as well as just the starkness between light and dark, the interior and the exterior of the project. The ground floor is designed to efficiently get people into the venue via number 2, this arrow, and as well as the lobby is designed to be welcoming and is designed to be leveraged as an event space as well as a meeting space, and also a place for film. The massing, I also developed the street here as well as the street to just increase the amount of people using the street, and also as a sort of bleed out area for this bar location or establishment. Here's a rendering of the ground floor to show how people enter and how the lobby is sort of entered. This elevation is designed to maximize views onto South Broadway towards the historical district, and the south elevation here to the right is designed to minimize heat gain during the hottest part of the day, but to have a very concerted view onto the fashion district, as well as these sort of puncturing stairwells that are interesting spectacles while you're in the project. The section illustrates the way in which the massing creates places for social interactions and little nooks and crannies where some massings protrude and then some massings come back in, and in those spaces in between, those are places for public interaction. This area to the right of the central divide is all public, and you can see the spaces to the right of the screen creating interesting places for people to sort of congregate and meet. Here, this environmental diagram sort of shows how heat would rise through this internal void space, while the incoming wind would perforate the screen and will penetrate the screen and cool the building down. This section illustrates the sort of the size and the scale of this internal space, as well as these enclosed spaces on the top cluster and the bottom cluster, these sort of glass areas. This
so
larger
it's screen, but it's outdoor.
Excuse me?
It's not indoor sealed up, but it's only.
Yes, so
Okay.
that's correct. So the interior portion, there's two different modes going on. The top portion is enclosed, the middle portion is open, and the bottom portion is enclosed. This is an elevation illustrating the type of materials I'm interested in using. These are sort of uniform metal panels that would be pressed to have to match the geometry of this interior wall, but also just having a very uniform ability to be used on the surface of the editing rooms and classrooms. This enlarged floor plan is designed to, the program primarily consists of sound stages, classrooms, and then animation labs. But in an attempt to sort of help single creators and to help people who are starting to create content and to get them to collaborate, there are bubble rooms here on the number 8, larger hallways to be leveraged for film locations, and large public spaces to also be used for presentation, media events, or simply screening material. And same thing goes on this plan. This is a typical. This is a view of the amphitheater and the scale I'm thinking of, and just the typical environment for this place. And then these are renderings of how I imagine that interior space feeling, and when you have people in them, and the ability to sort of use that leveraged hallway space as a film location backdrop, and a place for sort of random or spontaneous interactions. There's a 3D section illustrating how the internal structure interacts with the classroom and editing bays. This is how I imagine these drop ceilings being attached to the structure, as well as the way the lighting sort of interacts with the model, or with the project. And then this view is from the very, very top of the project, from the roof deck, and this is looking down into the various ways that students and teachers and faculty can move through the project in these spaces and find each other, looking at each other's work, and or interacting with each other. So finally, overall, this project is directed at serving a network of students and YouTube creators, novices, focused on making higher quality video content at in a changing industry by offering students free to use film locations and equipment. And yes, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Joshua, may I ask, can you explain how your specific program, which is, as I understand, this kind of film school academy for this content, like future media producers, how does this specific program create this very specific building, which has these exterior spaces, and those those like 3 major structural elements in front of that? Like this is what I did not get. Like what was the rationale that created this spatial idea? Does it relate to what they do or what the program comments, or is it a metaphor on the process itself of creating content, or is it related to the situation?
Right. In a larger massing, in terms of massing strategy, and program adjacency, I sort of separated. The largest separation is probably the difference between first and second year, their location in the program, and their related program pieces to those. So yeah, this second, say in the second year and third year thesis, this massing would is primarily sound stages, and then first year studies are primarily classrooms and editing bays, and then further,
Okay.
yeah.
I guess, and I don't know this, I feel like I should. Are there established kind of pedagogical models for film schools? Like what would be the analog of like the Bauhaus versus the Beaux-Arts models in like architecture education? And like, what's the history of this? Like who figured out how to teach people how to make films? And then that, and is that something, and then is that like a thing that you're able to draw kind of like forms and diagrams out of, and then how does that change? I mean, because like you're basically imagining like a post-film like film school. Mm-hmm. And which you kind of like you give away with this weird idea that you're making locations. Like I thought the idea that you shoot something on location is you don't shoot it, you know, on the back lot. You actually go to like Cambodia and shoot Apocalypse Now. You don't like, you know, make a jungle of the, you know, in a yard in Tarzana somewhere, you know.
I guess, well, to answer the first part of your question, I think I really was using the as a model for program. I was actually just looking at Met Film School in Berlin. I was looking at their plans, and I was looking at the sort of facilities that they were using, and I was using that as a typology. And I wasn't necessarily looking historically at how these spaces sort of were arrived at and how the program was divided. And then to your second question of creating spaces, the issue is that in regards to the thesis, the issue is that streaming is really not a free commodity, and it all comes at a cost to people who are purchasing it, paying for it, whether it be on YouTube, Netflix, Disney, wherever you're at. It's a very, very lucrative business. But the disconnect is that people who are sort of entering that sphere as a single person producing things, the issue is that they have a difficult time getting a hold of resources to do this. They don't have they don't necessarily have like the correct cameras, the correct lighting locations. There's all these things that they need to produce higher quality content that sort of matches more successful creators. So this, I created locations in this project.
Rhetorically, though, I mean, it's so much easier. Like I can use my smartphone and go on TikTok and do my booty dancing and you have like a following. Whereas like it used to be, you actually had to, you know, you actually shot film in film school and you had to have like, you know, like, you know, like you had to have money to start anything. And now it's, and so, but you're right to call it out as like not being as free as maybe it's imagined. And so, but I'm wondering if it really is a question of like access to good cameras versus like other kinds of infrastructures and platforms, and kind of like what the economics of the media is now. And like, I mean, like who would even be qualified to be a professor at a school of like YouTube influencing?
Can I jump in? I mean, it's all about you guys, but not in defense of Josh's project, mind you, but in defense of this YouTube idea, because I have little kids and they are very much into modeling and acting. And they have constant auditions, like, 3 or 4 a week. And this it used to involve driving to Hollywood like 3 or 4 times a week for several hours. And then it became that we set up a studio in our living room, with professional lights and, the colored papers in the background, et cetera, et cetera. And this kind of saved the commute drives, but it turns out that it was not professional enough. And they have now, acting coaches. And what we do is we go somewhere and we rent a studio, and an acting coach comes with them and puts in, and they formally will record a professional audition, because you can't compete for an audition for TV show if you don't have a professional audition. And it's just like, this is where it's gone, that the cell phone only can take you so far if you want to kind of get to the next level. So it's not in defense of Josh's design or his project, but that really, it's happened to me personally. So I haven't.
But let me.
I'm watching the Germans' faces, being like, "What? This is a normal LA family." Yes. Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
my nephew does similar stuff. Like, he's also LA grown up the last 7 years. He's like also in becoming a content provider for these sites. Yeah, I can see that. But still, we're asking. Okay, so this is then less a school than a facility, or, well, it's a school, right? It's the idea of a school, like a post-film school.
So it's truly just modeled after the Met Film School in Berlin, where it's originally like a film school, and the partnership with YouTube is almost it's not 100% of the education. It's maybe 20 to 25% of the education is sort of geared towards this. It's more of I consider it more of a evolution rather than like a.
Yeah. But so no, I just try to understand that there's a lot of luxury that you have in that building, like a lot of like open space, public space to meet, and this organized in the vertical and in between this like first year spaces. So, like, to tell us a little bit about it. I thought, okay, everybody's short on time, they run in, the building has to be super efficient, they don't even want to meet anyone, because they meet everyone online, and they're this kind of artificial like identity that they create. So but what was the idea here to create a building that is maybe consists out of like 50% like meeting space, public space, like non-programmed space?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, the kind of like intentionally inefficient circulation as a way to foster like interaction is like is a little bit of like an old, old chestnut that, like a throwaway line,
Yeah, I guess it goes back to trying to answer this thesis and try to at least answer how could you in some sort of public way make it possible for people to have like a higher level of production and also have a variety of stage spaces and I think in having these sort of like 50% circulation or at least higher circulation, there's an opportunity to leverage that as useful film location or useful backdrop or.
I don't even know if it needs to be backdrop. In your presentation, you were saying something that this building should serve as a network for students and others, and I thought that was very interesting because it could be the very essence of how media and communication works. And I think there was also, or that's at least how I am reading this desire of yours to even have this very readable or diagrammatical red staircase. I don't know if it needs to be red, but I understand that you want to express it. Because let's say this network idea, I feel it's already there and I do like it, but it could have been taken to even another level. I mean, in the 70s, there were those debates on hierarchies, and this often used metaphor of a tree. And then there was another metaphor of a root system, a rhizome, which basically is how the internet works, right? It's like a network. And I'm reading those spaces that you offer more as opportunities maybe to interact in a certain way and not necessarily as a backdrop to film. Maybe that too, but I think the other one is more maybe typologically, as you said, you referenced another house. I think it's always good to have your own take. You talked about this network idea, and I do see some of it.
But maybe it's not an efficient network. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's an obstruction. Maybe it's a really uncomfortable building that challenges me physically. That I also try to avoid maybe in my filming, because everyone can recognize it and then they know, oh, it's from there again. So maybe it's a machine against the smoothness of these media and content provision. That's my interpretation.
It insists on its idiosyncratic expression, and take a lot of effort and strength into coming up with this idiosyncratic expression. And my only question perhaps would be, because it reminds me very much of actually the 1990s Los Angeles. I was studying a year with Tom Main, and it was apart from being very stressful, it was also very enlightening, and it was very much about this insisting on this idiosyncratic and this phenomenological level of a sculpture that you could actually completely separate from any programmatic consideration, because it doesn't matter if it is a school or anything, but it is insisting on an architectural expression that is more or less a three-dimensional sculpture or a piece of art that should work against any smoothness or any digital smoothness interaction. It is completely against that. So I would perhaps eliminate the narrative of the digital streaming media, because what very beautifully your project for me is that it is an act of resistance to that. But also that's not a question, I'm sorry. It's just commenting or.
It's okay, it's okay. I was looking at Morphosis and the Emerson College quite closely, but yeah, I guess that does arrive here somewhere.
Yeah.
Do we have any last comments? I just thank you, Josh. I think it's a successful project in that it is provocative, whether or not people are buying into your approach. I think it's successful in having multiple readings. My reading of it is all about the social agenda, right? And that you've kind of set up and we're talking about. And I love the irony of that, like, idea about connections, real people connections being promoted in a place that's sole purpose is digital content of not real people connections. So I kind of appreciate that irony that you say this is all about digital content, but it's also all about really meeting people and making connections with real humans walking in these corridors and the interstitial spaces. And I think that irony for me is what I kind of liked about this project. But I think everybody kind of interprets it differently, and I think there's strength in that. So I think that's what's kind of nice. You know, we heard like 2 or 3 different kind of interpretations of what it is, or even could be, and parts of that narrative that could be left out or it's strengthened. So I think that's nice. Anyway, I want to release our wonderful jury. Thank you so much for your comments, for your time. You can go to bed now. But we appreciate it. Josh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Thank
Bye.
you. Congratulations.
See you.
Yes.
Good night, Jörg.
Good
Bye,
night.
all.
everyone.